In Kharkiv, Russia is backpedaling. These new satellite images you can see right there show destroyed bridges. Officials believe they were blown up by the Russians on the way out to slow a fierce Ukrainian counteroffensive. In Luhansk and Donetsk, the Russian air barrage continues in full force. Let's move to the battlefield, and you see the map here. I just want to go through, we were talking about this before we came on the air, just the time lapse, just to go back. This is March 5th, and now as you come all the way into May, you're going to watch, the Russians were taking ground here, and then as the months change, the Ukrainians take it back, but the Russians are making gains in this part of the country over here, in the east and down in through the south. And as you see some of the fighting going on up around Kharkiv, up here, you see these bridges now. What is the significance of this? The thinking, believing that the Russians, as they backed out because of a Ukrainian counteroffensive, essentially blew up the bridges to keep the Ukrainians from coming after them.
That's exactly right, John. When you split something like this, like a bridge, it's very difficult to actually put it back together again. And the Ukrainians needed this bridge and this one over here near Rubizhne to cross the river and actually deploy their forces on the other bank. The fact that they can't do it means that they're going to have to find a workaround. Now they can do that. They can build their own pontoon bridges. They can, bridge the gap between these two bridges. But the fact that they have to do that is going to delay their efforts to move forward in this counteroffensive.
And you see the marker here in Rubizhne. Let's just come back to the map here. If you come back and you look at the map and you see, and we've watched this fighting play out for some time. If we can go back a month ago, we were having a conversation of this anticipation they were going to have this giant tank battle. It has not played out that way. Why?
That's right. And the reason it hasn't played out that way is because right now what we see is the fact that the Russians have logistic problems and the Ukrainians don't have all of the weapons that they need from the Western forces, from NATO, from the United States. And the fact that they don't have those means that we're getting into a war of attrition. The mobility factor is gone, in essence, from these wars. Yes, there is some mobility that is happening. For example, in the town of Popasna, that has been taken by the Russians, just as an example. And the Russians are coming through this way, or trying to, at least through Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. But the very fact that they're doing this kind of in a very slow, methodical way indicates that both sides are finding where the other is moving. The Russians don't have the logistical support to move their tanks. The Ukrainians don't have the tanks to counter them.
And so Russians have had control here for 8 years, essentially, separatists, pro-Russian separatists. The Russians annexed Crimea to the south here 8 years ago as well. But now we're looking here at Melitopol here. Why is this significant in the context? If you go to an airbase there, this is a Ukrainian airbase there, but is now under Russian control, and you see these Russian transport planes there.
So the key is Russian transport planes, John. These can carry troops, equipment, especially airborne troops. They can bring these in and they can then deploy them out. So when you look at where the Russians are and where Melitopol is, this is perfect for them to establish that land bridge toward the southeast of Ukraine. This part right here, this area right here, solidifies their control of this area. Plus, it also gives them a chance to move to the north to the town of Zaporizhia, which is this right here.
And so we're watching, again, we've been talking about this for a month. Now let's move over from Melitopol over to Mariupol. And you just look at this, the Azovstal steel plant. This goes back to the very beginning of the war, March 22. You were remarking before we came on the air, you do see a crater. You do see a crater. Now you see essentially just flat earth.
Exactly. It's flat earth. It's a complete and utter destruction. This is kind of what you saw, in the aftermath of World War II bombings in places like Japan and Germany. This, of course, was, perhaps the result of, more precise. This is the strike that I mentioned earlier, and there's very little damage that is visible from this vantage point. But here, there's a lot of damage, and it shows that destruction was the name of the game for the Russian forces as they move forward.
And so, just wrap it all up for us in the sense as we close the week, in the sense that it's just been slow and plodding here. Slow and plodding here. The Ukrainians taking back some land here. What does that foretell for just weeks and months ahead?
Yes, what we're going to see, John, is basically a static, for the moment, unless there's a change in the types of logistics support that either side gets. We're going to see a basic static line that perhaps goes along these lines right here. There is a chance, of course, that the Russians may try to break out and try to, head toward Dnipro road junction. That's a major issue right there, and that could help to solidify their control over the eastern part of the country. But for the most part, Based on the Ukrainian resistance and the plodding nature of the Russian advance, I expect the line to be basically like this for a few weeks to come.
General, always a pleasure to see you. Let's talk about Kharkiv right now. This is the second major city that the Russians have retreated from. Let's push in here. How have the Ukrainians managed to push them back, and what's the strategic significance?
Yeah, what's really important to understand here is that the success that the Ukrainians are having around Kharkiv is important on a number of levels. Number one, it validates what the Ukrainians have been doing and we've been reporting on in terms of their ability to very creatively go after the Russians, and the Russians they're too hierarchical. They don't have leadership. They're incompetent, and basically they look like a bunch of fools, but they do have numbers. So what we see here is I think the Russians have realized, as you've indicated, with some success down here, lack of success here, what the Ukrainians are doing are now going to protect this flank. I don't want to get too detailed here, but they're going to protect this flank. And it wouldn't be surprising at all to see these forces now moving in this direction, making this, as we've discussed all along, this is the priority. This is where the mass needs to be achieved. This now, all this portion of Ukraine becomes what we call an economy of force. So what you've just reported on, cut the bridges here, Ukrainians have a hard time pursuing them, Russians can move forces down in that direction.
Do you see evidence of success here? We're talking about Rubizhny right now, which the Ukrainians themselves say that the Russians now more or less have in control. What's the significance if the Russians are able to gain more ground there?
Yeah, and again, going back to how the military filter through which I'm going to view this, if the Russians are achieving success here, they want to reinforce success. You don't want to put good money after bad. You don't want to reinforce failure. They're having a tough go up here, right? So let's take this, let's reinforce this, and let's make this the priority.
And what about the Black Sea? Because we keep seeing images of battles taking place around Snake Island here. As Major Mike Lyons told us before, the Ukrainians are trying to fight a naval battle here without a navy.
Yeah, they are. They are. So what's happening? Bear in mind a couple things. When you look at the Black Sea, this is a big bathtub. It's completely bordered. When you get in there, and the United States Navy does not like to get into the Black Sea because there's no place to hide. So what the Russians have is they have forces here. They've taken them out of Crimea. They're moving them in different locations so that they can effect with fire onto the shore. Because of the proximity and because of some intelligence collection capabilities, the Ukrainians now are going after these naval forces that the Russians are deployed. They are vulnerable, and the Ukrainians are being very creative in terms of how they're going after them. They don't have a navy, but they've got some capabilities to gather intelligence and reach further out, which is the key to the Ukrainian success, is get as deep as you can, force the Russians to make decisions that they wouldn't want to make so that they engage far differently because you've affected their rear areas.
Spider, a lot going on this morning. Thank you so much for helping us understand it.